Have you ever wondered why South Korea is rich, but North Korea is poor? I mean, same people, same culture, same starting point 70 years ago. But today, South Korea has skyscrapers and Samsung. North Korea has famines and blackouts. The difference is staggering. And it's not just these two countries. Here's what nobody tells you. Economic growth isn't random, it's not luck, it's not about natural resources or geography, or even how hard people work. Some countries figured out a formula, a specific set of conditions that turbocharge their growth, and other countries, despite having smart people and rich resources, completely missed it. Here at Simple Money, we've broken down what actually makes economies explode with growth. And today, I'm going to reveal why some countries get rich while others stay poor. This isn't just about countries. Understanding this changes how you think about your own financial growth, because the same principles apply. So here's what's really happening with economic growth around the world. Think about two farmers. Both work equally hard. Both have the same size field. But one farmer gets 10 times the harvest, year after year. How? Better tools, better seeds, better knowledge, better systems. The hard work matters, but it's not what creates the difference. Economies are the same way. Everyone focuses on how hard people work. But that's not what separates fast-growing economies from slow ones. It's the systems, the infrastructure, the rules, the incentives. Get these right and growth explodes. Get them wrong and decades of hard work produces nothing. Here's why this matters to you personally. Understanding economic growth helps you understand wealth creation. The same forces that make countries rich make individuals rich. And the same traps that keep countries poor keep people poor. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. The first thing you need to understand is what I call the property rights foundation. This sounds boring. Trust me, it's not. Property rights might be the single most important factor in economic growth, and most people completely overlook it. Here's what I mean. Can you actually own things? Can you start a business and keep the profits? Can you buy land and know it's really yours? Can you make a contract and trust it'll be enforced? In countries with strong property rights, the answer is yes. You can build something. You can invest your time and money. And you get to keep the results. This creates an incredible incentive. People work harder. They invest more. They take risks because they know they'll benefit. But in countries with weak property rights, everything changes. Maybe you start a business, but officials demand bribes. Maybe you buy land, but someone with connections takes it. Maybe you succeed, but the government seizes your assets. When this happens, people stop trying. Why work hard if someone just takes the result? Why invest if you can't keep the gains? Think about it this way. Imagine you spent years building a beautiful garden, but your neighbor could take your vegetables anytime, and there's nothing you could do about it. Would you keep gardening? Would you invest in better tools? Would you expand? Of course not! You'd do the minimum. Maybe grow just enough for today. That's what weak property rights do to an entire economy. China figured this out in the late 70s. Before then, everything was collectively owned. Farmers worked in communes. Nobody owned their harvest. Production was terrible. Then China started letting farmers keep what they grew above a quota. Suddenly, agricultural output exploded. Same farmers, same land, different incentives. That's the power of property rights. The second mechanism is what I call the innovation engine. Fast-growing economies don't just work harder. They work smarter. They innovate. They find better ways to do things. And this creates a compounding effect. Small improvements multiply over time. But innovation doesn't happen automatically. It requires specific conditions. First, you need freedom to experiment. Try new things. Fail without being destroyed. In rigid economies, innovation is dangerous. Trying something new might get you in trouble. Better to do things the old way. But in flexible economies, experimentation is rewarded. This creates thousands of small innovations. Most fail. Some succeed. The successful ones spread. Second, you need competition. When companies compete, they have to innovate or die. Better products, lower prices, new solutions. Competition forces innovation. But in protected economies, companies don't need to innovate. They're guaranteed customers. They have monopolies, so they stagnate. and the whole economy stagnates with them. Third, you need educated people. Innovation requires knowledge, understanding, the ability to see new possibilities. Countries that invest in education generate more innovation. Countries that neglect education fall behind. It's that simple. Look at South Korea again. After the war, they were desperately poor, poorer than many African countries. But they invested heavily in education, encouraged competition, allowed businesses to experiment. Within 50 years, they went from poverty to wealthy, from farming to semiconductors. That's the innovation engine at work. The third thing you need to understand is what I call the capital catalyst. Growth requires investment. You need money to build factories, to buy equipment, to train workers, to fund research. But where does this money come from? And more importantly, where does it go? This is where many economies fail. In fast-growing economies, capital flows efficiently. Savers put money in banks. Banks lend to businesses with good ideas. Investments get made. Productive activities get funded. The money goes where it can create the most value. This creates a virtuous cycle. Investments generate returns. Returns become new investments. Growth compounds. But in slow-growing economies, capital gets stuck. Maybe it goes to politically connected companies instead of productive ones. Maybe people don't trust banks, so they hide money. Maybe corruption means investments disappear. Maybe the financial system is so primitive that capital can't move efficiently. When capital doesn't flow to productive uses, growth stalls. Think about it this way. Imagine you have seeds. In a good system, those seeds get planted where they'll grow best. Rich soil, good sunlight, proper care. They multiply. But in a bad system, the seeds get planted in terrible soil, or they get stolen, or they rot in storage. Same seeds, completely different results. That's capital allocation. Singapore understood this. They built an incredibly efficient financial system. Capital flows freely. Regulations are clear. Corruption is minimal. Foreign investment pours in because people trust the system. This capital funds growth. Growth generates more capital. The cycle continues. The fourth mechanism is what I call the infrastructure multiplier. Infrastructure sounds boring. Roads, bridges, ports, electricity, internet. But infrastructure is magic. It multiplies the productivity of everything else. And most people completely underestimate its importance. Here's why infrastructure matters so much. Good infrastructure reduces friction. Moving goods becomes cheaper. Communication becomes faster. Transactions become easier. This makes every business more productive. A factory with reliable electricity produces more than one with blackouts. A farmer with good roads can reach markets. A company with fast internet can coordinate globally. But bad infrastructure drains the economy. Every business spends extra time and money overcoming infrastructure problems. Generators for blackouts. Bribes for permits. Hours stuck in traffic. Unreliable suppliers. All of this reduces productivity. And when productivity is low, growth is impossible. Here's what makes this particularly important. Infrastructure has network effects. The more you build, the more valuable each piece becomes. One road is useful. A network of roads transforms the economy. One port is good. Multiple ports competing create efficiency. This is why infrastructure investment generates such huge returns. China's growth over the last 40 years is partly an infrastructure story. They built ports, highways, rail, cities, power plants. This infrastructure made Chinese businesses incredibly productive. Manufacturing costs dropped, delivery time shortened, reliability increased. Global companies moved production to China because the infrastructure made it profitable. The fifth thing you need to understand is what I call the stability requirement. This one is subtle but crucial. Growth requires stability. Not perfect peace, not zero risk, but predictable rules, consistent enforcement, the absence of chaos. When people can plan for the future, they invest in it. When they can't, they focus on survival. Think about it. Would you plant a forest if you thought war might come next year? Would you build a factory if the government might change the rules tomorrow? Would you invest in education if you might need to flee the country? Of course not. Uncertainty kills long-term thinking. And long-term thinking is essential for growth. Fast-growing economies have stable institutions. courts that enforce contracts, property rights that don't disappear, rules that change slowly and predictably. This stability lets people plan. Make long-term investments, build for the future, and these long-term investments drive growth. But unstable economies can't grow, even if they have resources, even if people work hard. The uncertainty prevents investment. Why build when it might be destroyed? Why invest when you might lose everything? So people keep wealth liquid, hide it, send it abroad, and the economy stagnates. Look at the difference between Chile and Venezuela. Both have resources, both have educated people. But Chile built stable institutions, predictable rules, property rights. They grew steadily. Venezuela had political instability, constant rule changes, arbitrary seizures. They collapsed. Same region, different stability, completely different outcomes. But here's what nobody wants to admit. These 5 factors work together. You can't just pick one, you need all of them. Property rights without infrastructure doesn't work. Innovation without capital doesn't scale. Stability without property rights creates stagnation. It's a package deal. And here's what makes this even more interesting. Once you have all 5, growth becomes almost automatic. They reinforce each other. Property rights encourage investment. Investment funds innovation. Innovation improves productivity. Productivity generates capital. Capital funds infrastructure. Infrastructure enables more business. More business strengthens institutions. The cycle continues. But if you're missing even one, the whole system struggles. It's like a chain. The weakest link determines the strength. Countries that grow fast figured out how to strengthen all the links. Countries that stay poor are usually missing 1 or 2 critical pieces. Let me tell you about 2 countries. We'll call them Country A and Country B. Both started poor in the 1960s. Both had similar populations, similar resources. But today, Country A is wealthy. Country B is still struggling. Country A decided to focus on education. They invested heavily in schools, sent students abroad to learn, brought knowledge back. They also established clear property rights. If you built a business, it was yours. They created a stable legal system, predictable rules, consistent enforcement. They built infrastructure, ports, roads, power. They encouraged competition, let companies fight for customers, and they allowed capital to flow freely. Banks could lend to good ideas. The results were slow at first. Decades of investment without dramatic changes, but the foundation was being built. Then, suddenly, growth exploded. Education created skilled workers. Property rights encouraged business formation. Infrastructure made companies productive. Competition drove innovation. Capital funded expansion. Within 30 years, Country A went from poor to middle income, then to wealthy. But Country A didn't just get lucky. They made deliberate choices, resisted corruption, maintained stability, kept investing in fundamentals, even when it was hard. Even when other paths seemed faster, they played the long game, and it paid off massively. Now Country B. They also wanted growth, but they took shortcuts. Instead of property rights, they gave monopolies to connected companies. Instead of competition, they protected national champions. Instead of education, they focused on extracting resources. Instead of infrastructure, they spent on prestige projects. Instead of stability, they had constant political fights. The results were predictable. Some people got very rich. The politically connected, the monopolists. But the economy didn't grow. Businesses struggled. Innovation died. Educated people left. Capital fled. And decades later, Country B is still poor. Not because people don't work hard, not because they lack resources, but because the system doesn't create growth. The difference between Country A and Country B wasn't culture, wasn't luck, wasn't even intelligence. It was systems. Country A built growth-friendly systems. Country B built extraction-friendly systems. And systems determine outcomes. Here's what most people don't realize. This isn't just about countries. The same principles apply to your personal finances. Want to grow wealth? You need property rights for yourself. Control over your assets. You need to invest in your skills. That's education. You need capital to deploy. That's savings. You need infrastructure. That's systems and tools. And you need stability. That's emergency funds and consistent habits. The countries that grow aren't special. They just created conditions where growth compounds. They removed friction, aligned incentives, built infrastructure, maintained stability, and let the market do the rest. It's not magic, it's systems. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most countries that stay poor do so because of bad systems. Not bad people. Not lack of resources. Not culture. Systems. And changing systems is hard. Because existing systems benefit someone. The politically connected, the monopolists, the corrupt officials. These people fight to maintain bad systems, even when it keeps the country poor. This is why growth isn't universal. It's not that some countries don't know what to do, it's that the people in power benefit from the current system. Changing to a growth-friendly system would reduce their power, so they resist, and the country stays poor, even when the solution is obvious. Property rights, innovation, capital flows, infrastructure, and stability. These 5 things determine economic growth. Get all 5 right, and your economy booms. Miss even one, and growth stalls. It's that simple, and that complicated. Because implementing these isn't just technical, it's political. It requires fighting vested interests, resisting corruption, maintaining discipline over decades. Most countries can't do it. The few that do transform themselves, from poor to middle income, from middle income to wealthy, the path is clear. Walking it is hard. And here's what this means for you. Understanding these forces helps you make better decisions. Where to invest? Where to work? Where to live? What skills to build? Countries with good growth fundamentals will create opportunities. Countries without will decline. You can position yourself accordingly. It also helps you understand your own financial growth. Are you investing in education? That's innovation. Are you building capital? That's savings and investment. Are you creating systems? That's infrastructure. Are you maintaining stability? That's emergency funds and discipline. The same principles that grow economies grow wealth. The countries that figured this out aren't smarter. They're not special. They just implemented the 5 growth factors consistently. They protected property rights. They encouraged innovation. They channeled capital efficiently. They built infrastructure. They maintained stability. And growth followed. Inevitably. Predictably. Powerfully. The countries that didn't aren't cursed. They're not doomed by geography or culture or history. They just haven't implemented the growth formula. Usually because it's politically difficult. Because existing powers resist. Because short-term extraction seems easier than long-term growth. But the formula is available. Known. Proven. Your financial future works the same way. You can extract from your current position, spend everything, live for today. Or you can build growth systems, invest in skills, accumulate capital, create infrastructure, maintain stability. The choice determines the outcome, just like it does for countries. The question isn't whether the formula works. Dozens of countries have proven it does. South Korea, Singapore, Chile, Taiwan, Estonia, Botswana, different continents, different cultures, same formula, all succeeded. The question is whether you'll apply it to your finances, to your career, to your life. Because economic growth isn't mysterious. It's not random. It's the result of specific, identifiable factors. And once you understand those factors, you can create growth. In economies, in companies, in your personal wealth, the formula is there, proven, waiting to be used.